Now joining us in the Raising Cane's guest chair, Thomas Dimitroff. Game days are better together. Game days are better with Cane's. Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love. Thomas Dimitroff, former front office man here in New England, former general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, as we all know. I'd like to say friend of the program. We've had you on several years now.
Yeah, a bunch of years in a row.
And so, Thomas, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always good to see you.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Thomas now with Sumer Sports, football data and roster management company. It's kind of analytics, kind of nerdy, which we're going to get to. I can't help but talk about that because it's a nit to pick. But first of all, Thomas, real quick, you were back in the cycle again this offseason. You got a couple looks there in New York and Tennessee for GM openings. Obviously came up just short. What happened there?
So I was this year I decided, look, every day of my life I think about evaluating players and building football teams, and I decided that I was going to put my foot back in. They reached out to me at New York to interview. They were looking for, ostensibly out the gate, for a veteran talent, right? A lot of times people are hiring first-time general managers these days. I was a benefited that, of course, back in the day. But I thought I was one of the guys that they were interested in. And we had a really good interview. Everything went well. But as you know, if you watch that, Mike Tannenbaum and Rick Spielman were in charge of the search there. And they decided to go with two first-timers in Aaron Glenn and Darren Mugia. Love Darren Mugia, by the way. Know him well. He's at Denver. Young guy. Gets an opportunity. I like the idea of getting back into this league because I think the league continues to need a good mix of young and veteran guys. Not just because I have ulterior motives, because I want to be in there. I believe it's great for the league. I think it's really important.
But you've also talked about coaches get second chances, but GMs don't seem to.
Yeah. Well, and it's vital in my mind. I watched it this year. All the first-time general managers, and I was there, the questions that they're being asked are very different than the second-timers, right, interviewing for it. And I realized this year, when you're the first-timer interviewing, it's like, can you do this? Can you do this? Okay, that's good. You sound good. Good answer. When you're the second-time potential, you did this, and they have such a history, especially 13 years in this seat. There's a lot of history there that they want to dig into.
Well, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that?
Oh, yeah. And I realized,
what do you get peppered by? Like, what's the second guess they throw at you?
I would say it has nothing to do with Super Bowl loss, of course, right? It's not. That's not.
Why'd you throw on second?
Yeah.
They don't give me that one?
Yeah, it's not that. But the funny thing, what I find it more is what happened in the end with you and DQ, you and Dan Quinn.
Yep.
And Dan and I have a great relationship. But anytime when you're with we were there together for 6 years. In that last year, they're going to say, what happened? Did you guys break? Did you guys splinter? Everyone, I mean, you can ask anyone, even the people that were interviewing us in the process. Rick Spielman and Mike Tannenbaum had their splintering. Anyone that's in that spot, that's more it. It was, they would ask about, what happened with this draft pick or that draft pick. We had one draft after Julio Jones, right? We went up and got him. I'll never do that differently. Never. But the year after that was the worst draft of my
You mean you don't think Jonathan Baldwin's just as good as Julio Jones?
No, I don't.
So you didn't take that advice?
No.
I'm chuckling here, Thomas, a little to myself.
Yeah.
Tannenbaum was doing the interviewing. What you're not going to turn around and rip these owners. And so, what owner is going to turn around and bring in the GM he fired to interview his next GM? That's like the top three dumbest things I've ever heard.
I don't know what to say to that.
You don't have anything to say.
I don't know what to say.
You know what I mean, Mazz? What are we doing?
No, I totally get it. Yeah.
I think personally, their feeling about it. How do I know this? But two football guys that have been around quite a long time and are versed in different areas. Mike Tannenbaum, very different than Rick Spielman as far as what they bring to the table as football men, right? And so I think that gave them a wide range and widened the aperture, so to speak. And then the president was there, and of course, Woody Johnson and his brother Chris Johnson.
Okay. Do they ask you, for example, with the Jets, what would you do with our quarterback situation?
Yes.
And what was your answer?
My answer was...
Come on, you can say now, right?
No, my answer was, I think one of the best ever, and et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, I don't really want to hear that. We'll get to the point here, basically. And mine was, it's time. He should go somewhere else and potentially play a couple more years somewhere else. I just think it's time in that organization.
So you said to them, I would move on from Aaron Rodgers.
I said that it was time for them to move on if I were to be in that spot. And again, I think Aaron would probably say the same thing. I don't want to answer for him, of course. But I think he's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. Here's the thing. When you watch him, I mean, that guy can make calls. He makes throws still off the side, off camber stuff that he is still has the ability to win for an organization. And these quarterbacks, this year's draft class, I think Aaron Rodgers goes somewhere else, can help a team again for 2 more years, especially while some of these young guys come in and they're developing, because this is not the same quarterback class as last year in the draft. I think Aaron would be good in the right team, the right spot.
Do you think he'd be a fit in Vegas
Yeah, well,
with Brady?
Well, that's a good call. I don't know about it. It might be. I mean, there's two guys that understand veteran quarterback talent and how they can change organizations. And again, I think it's going to be interesting to see back to what the Jets do there. So if they do move on from Aaron Rodgers, how are they going to approach that position? Because it's not easy to go out. There's a couple of free agents out there, but one's not going to necessarily come back there, right? That used to be there.
Right. Darnold.
I just really think this is an interesting year. It's the same thing with Tennessee, who I also interviewed with. Tennessee they have the first overall pick. You think about that spot.
They ask you the same question there?
About Will
Thomas,
Levis?
what would you do at 1?
They didn't ask me. I said this personally. I would look very hard, make sure you do your due diligence and dig like crazy, like never before. But the idea of, and I'm not a trade back guy normally. My name was Trader Thomas because I was always moving up. I think this is a perfect opportunity to trade back, get a really bona fide offensive lineman for you. They need on their right side. They need to continue to build their right side on the Tennessee team. Keep building that so that the running game can play, and then play better and perform better, and then get Will Levis another shot in there to really see if that's the person.
So you don't necessarily love those quarterbacks, Ward or Sanders, then?
I say Ward or Sanders have a lot of requisite traits, but to come in and start and expect them to win games right away is complicated. I don't think those guys in their development are Jaden Daniels. Right? Jaden Daniels, when you watched him last year, and I know it's hindsight, a lot of people are saying, he had a special element to him. The only thing you worried about with him is this cat going to get hurt because he's going to run? And he did that. There were times this year where I saw him, the way that he fell around things, I'm like, that guy's got God on his side for sure. So, yeah.
Thomas Dimitroff joining us here from Radio Row. What was your quarterback order last year, and have you been disabused of it after watching him for a year?
It was Jaden Daniels for sure. I like Drake Maye. If that's where you're going,
just your thoughts on Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, Jaden Daniels. That whole thing, is that shaken out the way that you thought? Did Caleb Williams disappoint you in year one? Have you changed if you had to redraft it, what would be your order?
No, well, of course, it would be Jaden Daniels first in my mind. I think the Caleb Williams thing, I think that's a little concerning to me right now. I want to see how that plays out, because there were times during the year, and I know their offensive line was up and down, right? I get that in Chicago, but I was more concerned about where he truly was, as I'm a huge believer, and you guys have seen one of the best leaders ever at that position, how that cat is going to really lead that offense and the team. And I was just I wanted to see how that played out with Caleb. Where the other two guys were talking about, I feel like they were on top of that.
It didn't play out so great. Like some of those questions are still there with Williams, right?
Sure, right. Some of those questions might be still there. Yeah, exactly.
So you like Maye's leadership qualities then?
I like Maye's. I like a lot about him, and I think, as you know, that guy is a good athlete. For a big guy, I love watching these quarterbacks now that are good-sized guys who can move around, like we call it a 6 or 7 athlete, like a very good athlete by trade because of who they are. They don't have to be 6 feet or 5'11" to move nowadays, right? There's some really good big quarterbacks out there. I used to say that all the time. I'm like, I love Matt Ryan beyond. And in the end, if I ever had an opportunity to do it again, it would be interesting to have someone that's hyper mobile there. Keep everyone on their toes, right?
Thomas Dimitroff, again, joining us from the Raising Cane's guest chair. You work for Sumer Sports, football data, roster management company. Sounds very analytic-driven to me. So what makes your roster management system or approach different? And where do analytics come in?
Okay.
So for example, this guy, I'm just going to make this up. A traditional scout would say, look at his hip swivel. Look at how for a corner. Look at how he opens his hips. What's the next spin on that using data for a corner?
Well, let me just be clear about this, and I'm semantically responsible on this. I tell everyone this isn't data driven because that feels too controlling. This is data informed. So if a team brings on data and they utilize data, it's making sure that they utilize it appropriately. But in the end, it is about football drive, and that's what I was trying to say. Me, if I were to ever go back as a general manager, 100%, my background is all about football. I look at the data that's out there, and I say, okay, we have a 6'5" on this player. He is good at A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z. Data is saying he's a little less accomplished in those areas. Let's look at that. Let's bring that back to the scouting staff, and let's say, Data is saying that he's a 5.5 in this area. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's put the vids up.
So
and let's
this
compare.
area, meaning, like, for example, this area, defending one side of the field, he's bad on his left side, or he's bad on his right side. Does it come down? And now let's put the video up of him defending the right hash, and let's take a look at that.
It could be that. It could be his lack of clothes, right? His lack of, like, planting his foot because he has a splayed right foot and he's got a hitch in his step. I'm being really facetious now.
Okay.
We watch that. We're like, wow, that is legitimate, and it is affected in his ability to spin out and cover the post corner exactly. You can dig in deeply. I think if you look at it that way, our big sell point here at Sumer Sports, roster management company, we're not game time decision making. We are roster building, and what we are subjective, and the objective data, the deeper data analytics, we're a combination of both. So what happens is we have over 600 years of experience on our scouting staff. We have 5 former general managers and a whole bunch of personnel directors, et cetera, et cetera. We grade 3,000 players a year, 800 college, 2,200-ish, whatever that is, 2,200 in pro every year. That data through all of our metrics that we're grading become the foundation of our algorithm. So it is, and then we fold in all the other data that's out there, of course, to help build those models. Talking about, remember I used the word propeller heads last time, and I love our propeller heads, but I have to be mindful of, when I sit down with them as a football guy and say, you guys are outrageously smart and I love you.
Do you watch the game?
Yeah. And so I think
that's what
and they do. These guys, it's amazing when they put their big brains to use. I'm like, wow, okay. I give them their due, but the reality of it is I want to really hit home. It is subjective and objective for us. In no way am I ever saying you go in and look at the data, and that's because there are times when we all of a sudden look at that and some guy will come to me and whisper, hey, I kind of like this guy. What do you think about him? I'm like, he's horrible. Well, but his data said he was the top of the group. I'm like, I'm sorry. And they kind of, slink away because you have to look at it all. The whole package is obviously important.
How about the in-game stuff? I know, so that's not what you guys do, but do you watch games and say this has gotten a little out of hand? Because it feels that way to us with all the fourth. It really comes out.
The fourth down thing's out of control.
The 2-point
The fourth
conversions.
downs and 2-point conversions.
Yeah.
Like those two things feel like they've kind of jumped the shark.
Well, I think people were bringing up Dan Campbell because he was very successful in those areas, right? Personally, I think having an open mind to it, but in the end, there's a hunch and there's a heart or a gut thing on it sometimes where you just know what you have to do. You never really were endorsing Bill Belichick on those areas. I think I brought that up last.
Well, I not endorse him. Like, I feel like Bill did it out of his gut. Like when he went for it in Indy. Were you with him in what that was 08?
09.
09?
I was not. No,
you were gone.
No,
Yeah. So okay, but in 09, 4th and 2 in Indianapolis at the cold, coming out of their own 28-yard line, something like that.
Yeah, 28.
I don't think he consulted with maybe Ernie was in his ear saying something, but I don't think that was like, well, our win percentage here. I just think he went with his gut. I don't want to give Peyton Manning the ball back.
We can't stop Manning, so we're going for it.
It's like, I don't think that was analytically driven. I think it was his gut.
But don't you think anyone who is like a really good football person is going to say, we'll use Minnesota's head coach, right? I mean, did he win the Coach of the Year, by the way?
O'Connell? I don't know if they've announced it.
I don't know if they've announced it yet.
Well, he and Dan, I think, I'm a big DQ guy. I think those two guys should be up for it, right? I think the really good ones are really football, but they know that I'm going to look at that and consider it. But in the end, I'm going to take all the information in and I'm going to make the decision that I know deep down this is the best thing to do. And it's not just off of, yes, sir, I got it. Thanks, data guy, I got it. That's what we're going to do. That is one thing I'm not for.
I just think these teams have taken it too far.
I understand.
There's some Sundays, this maybe it was conference weekend, divisional weekend, one of the two. We just added up all the 2-point conversions, and the teams were 2 for 6. Okay, you could have gotten 6 points if you just all kicked. Instead, you went for 2 and you ended up with 4. I'm not a data scientist, but I feel like you go underwater there if you just kick the effing ball. Never mind sort of the psychological impact that I think the analysts do not. You scored one of these teams, I can't remember who it was or when, but they scored at the end of the second quarter. It's like you're going into the tunnel having just scored 7. No, it's 6 because you just missed the 2-pointer, and I feel like sometimes missing that 2-pointer takes a little air out of the balloon, and it impacts emotionally, and the analyst never looks at that, and I think the whole thing's just gone too far in that regard. Getting points, a successful drive.
Yeah, no, I get that, and it can be frustrating at times, and I know, and sometimes it goes against, as a third party, just to tap it all together with us. I mean, that is something that we make very clear to the teams. We have 5 NFL teams right now. We have 7 NCAA programs. By the way, that's a big thing for us, which I know you don't want to talk NCAA here. Portal, NIL, there's a lot of work to be done there, and a lot of work to be done for our company because of the combination.
I got to ask you one more before you go, because it's time to go.
Yeah.
How come Belichick doesn't have a job in the NFL?
Did I tell you I think he's the best coach to ever coached in this league? And I don't know that. I really don't. I was really surprised. And yet I can imagine whatever anyone says about Bill and how is he going to recruit, Bill needs to get on the phone for 30 seconds and tell anyone that he's going to make and talk to the uncle of the kid and tell anyone he's going to make them the best possible pro they can be. I'm going to be so amazed to see what's going on there and how they're going to be recruiting there, because I think they're going to do some special stuff there. But that's where you expected me to go with that answer.
Yes, exactly.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.